Hello, Moby.
Hi.
Welcome to France and welcome to Virgin again.
Oh, thanks.
When we met 10 years ago, you were into rock. And at that time, some conservative people treated you as a kind of dance traitor.
Yeah.
And it was really silly and funny in a way. So now you're going back to your first musical love. And this album is a kind of love to dance music.
Well, this album last night, it's a very eclectic dance record, and some of the songs, it has some hip hop songs on it, it has some techno songs on it, it has some very quiet down tempo songs, but it's really just inspired by living in New York and spending way too much time going out to bars and nightclubs, and also the dance scene has become very nostalgic, and so it's funny because I'll go out to bars in New York and hear a 21-year-old DJ playing records that I played back in the 80s. And so it's almost like this continuum of dance music.
Do you consider yourself more as a DJ or a musician?
Well, I grew up playing classical music. I played classical guitar and I played piano. And then when I was 13 years old, I started playing in punk rock bands. So I started playing drums, I started playing bass. So as much as I love DJing, my background is much more as a musician.
This album seems to be, as you said, the result of a kind of journey or a night into several clubs. But it has been released in your home recording studio. So that's a paradox between something which coming from outside and your inside mood.
Well, that's ultimately, what the artist does, whether you're a writer or a painter or a musician, is you go out into the world and you get inspiration, and then you come home to your little sanctuary and you turn that inspiration into a book or a poem or a story or a song or what have you. So this record it comes from that place as well.
This poem on this record, poem from Arthur Rimbaud.
Yeah.
And I noticed that this poem is quite important for Arthur Rimbaud because it was the time when he discovered that he has to choose his own way between moral things, beauty, and he had at that time a kind of internal turmoil. And I was wondering, it was the reflection of what you were in your, when you were a teenage, that you have to find your own way between some moral things and try to find your own aesthetics.
Well, it's a big question, and it really is that sort of that dialectic is the dialectic of being alive for humans. It's like trying to determine, like you either like you have two sides of the dialectic. You have over here you have society and convention, and over here you have chaos. And where do you live on that scale? A lot of people live, like Jean-Marie Le Pen lives over here by society and convention. Rimbaud lived more over here, which was rejecting convention, rejecting anything that even looked like convention. But it is interesting to try and figure out where you put yourself in that continuum. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you recognize yourself when you read this poem? The first time you read it?
Rimbaud is, my favorite poet of all time. Although I've never read it in the original French because my French is terrible. But I do love, and I very much relate to being torn between those two poles. The pole of convention and the pole of chaos. Where you go, and like convention is familiar and convention is seductive, and society rewards you when you go towards convention, but a life lived too close to convention has no substance and no meaning to it. And the greatest artists, the greatest artists and writers and thinkers, whether it's William Blake or Nietzsche or Rimbaud, whomever, have all been more drawn towards the sort of chaotic side of things.
William Blake always comes as a reference for sci-fi artists, people who think about the future. but they are really torn, a little bit torn inside between spirituality and technology. And I think these things is pretty close to what you do. There's several layers of understanding what you do, because the first layer, you think it's a dance record, an electronic record, but behind it there's some spirituality.
Ooh, I just got to the bottom of the tea. It was very bitter. Spirituality is it's a really difficult thing to talk about, because I never know what it means. And spirituality means such different things to different people. I guess, again, to me, spirituality it's the intangible, the undefined and the intangible, and it's the sort of the force that moves through the universe that we can't see and we can't touch, and it's that, it's just spirit. And that's why it's such a difficult thing to talk about. And again, there's that human propensity to try and define spirituality. And people, whenever there's something beautiful and spiritual, people try and describe it or codify it or make it institutionalized. And it's very difficult to sort of let spirituality be spiritual. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I've always loved reading like Taoism, because one of the things I love about Taoism, it never tries to define anything. It says that the undefined spirituality is the true spirituality, and the moment you try and put labels on it, it becomes human. It's kind of like, but humans, we can't help ourselves. You put a human in front of a beautiful sunset, and their first thought is, how do I take a picture of it? How do I capture it? How do I take this thing and reduce it into a form that makes sense to me? And we're really, as humans, we're just not very good at stepping back and just letting things be.
To be here and now.
Yeah, live here and now and say, there's the sunset, it's going to go away, it's never going to be the exact same again, and that's okay.
Did you try to construct your album as a journey where you start to go outside, dance, you meet people, and then you end up in a chill out atmosphere, just enjoy yourself, relaxing and trying to...
Yeah, the idea for the record was to take a long night out in New York, 8 hours in New York, and condense it into 65 minutes. So the record starts... the record starts very innocent. The first couple of songs are just very simple and very lighthearted, and then it starts to get a little bit darker and starts to get a little stranger, and then it goes back up again, and then towards the end it becomes quieter and calmer, and that's supposed to be sort of when the sun is coming up and you're at home with someone you love, and you've been out for 8 hours, but it feels like you've been out for eternity, and you're finally home.
The first track remind us of 80s technopop, electropop. Artists like Fat Gadget or people like Depeche Mode, the mute artists who share the same label. Did you like them?
Oh yeah. Well, and I could never figure out, because Fat Gadget's, one of his first singles was called "Collapsing New People," and Einstürzende Neubauten was "Collapsing New Buildings," and I could never figure out which came first. Like, did Fat Gadget write a song based on Einstürzende Neubauten, or did Einstürzende Neubauten name themselves after a Fat Gadget song?
They record together,
oh,
and the rhythmic behind the song was a recording of a print press, a huge machine that comes from recording from Einstürzende Neubauten.
Oh, okay.
They gave it to Frank Tobey.
Oh, okay. So, but yeah, being on mute is interesting. Like, I have to say, because musically, I love classical music, I love punk rock, I like folk music, I like jazz. Country, but being on mute, it makes you want to make more electronic music. Because it's almost like having Daniel Miller as the head of Mute. If I make a record that's more electronic, he's going to be happy. And so it's like, because he's like the father figure. So you can tell, like, the further you get on Mute, the further you get away from electronics, the less Daniel likes the music. You know, I mean, he likes his artists to be artists, but he like I know that if I make a record only using old analog synthesizers, he's going to be very, very happy. Because that's what he loves. If you go to Daniel's apartment, he has all these big, huge, modular analog synths, and he makes music all the time. He just never releases it. So, but Mute is. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I'm an individual artist, but I'm also very much a Mute artist. You know, and the records that I make, if I was on any other label, I wouldn't make these records. You know.
Have you heard the last Recoil album?
No, I mean I did vocals on an early Recoil album.
I know.
I haven't.
You did some rap.
Yeah, I did some.
It's quite unusual.
Sort of. I rap vocal. Let's call it non-singing. But no, I haven't. I haven't heard the most recent one. I saw Alan and his wife just a couple years ago, or actually maybe like a year ago. But I haven't heard his new records.
He made a new record which is pretty close to what you did with Play. Some deeply rooted in gospel and blues.
Really?
That's why I was asking you.
See, the funny thing is, being on Mute, they never send me the records that other people like. I have to ask for them. So, in America they're a little bit better, but the Europeans never send me the Mute records they make. So I don't know what anybody else is doing on the label.
Another reference that comes to my mind is Cabaret Voltaire.
Oh yeah, well,
the third song, I guess, sounds like a Cabaret Voltaire song. Kind of electro-funk and industrial atmosphere.
Yeah, sort of like back in the days of like Sensoria,
yeah.
And and drinking gasoline.
The Sword, the Covenant, and the Arm of the Lord.
Yeah. I mean, no, Cabaret Voltaire. There was that period, which was very. Okay, when house music was first developing, there was also this sort of like, I don't want to call it industrial or electronic body music, but there was sort of like that as house music was developing, there was also like the European, more new wave version of that, which was, you know, as you said, like Cabaret Voltaire, Nitzareb, Front 242, but Cabaret Voltaire and Meat Beat Manifesto. And it was such an interesting approach because it was all dance music. You know, I mean, Front 242, Meat Beat Manifesto, Cabaret Voltaire, Test Department, so like it was all music you could play in clubs, but it wasn't. It was coming from such a different perspective. But Cabaret Voltaire, I always loved. Like, I really loved their approach. And Stephen Mallender, I think he lives in Perth, Australia now. Because I was in Perth, Australia a couple of years ago, and someone said, "Oh, did you know that Mal from Cabaret Voltaire lived here?" And I was like, "It's a far way from Sheffield, you know, because Sheffield is cold industrial city in northern England, and Perth is a surf town."
He has a farm. I was told that he has a farm in Australia.
Yeah.
Did you think about this record?
But actually, but that song you're talking about, the third one, it's called 2570.
Yeah.
It's also. Do you remember the band Visage? Visage,
yeah, for sure. Steve
Visage.
Strange.
Yeah, so that song 2570 is actually more inspired by Visage.
The new romantic scene from London.
Yeah, because if you listen to the first Visage album, there's some. It's amazing because it had Barry Adamson.
Yeah, playing bass on it.
Yeah, and he was in Magazine at the time, and Midjour,
Billy Curry from Ultravox.
Yeah, and so it was like this new romantic supergroup, and. It's such an underappreciated record.
When I met Barry Adamson, he told me that he think it was just a commercial project.
Oh, it's a beautiful record.
And I said to him that it was a beautiful record, and it was my first step into innovative music. I used electronic music, but a lot of melodies and.
I mean, because Midjour, you know, from Ultravox, they had such and like on Visage and Ultravox, it was so interesting because. There are a lot of big rock elements. Like if you listen to the song Visage, it has big guitars, but all these sequencers and synthesizers and syndrums, and I love that record. Yeah.
That was my first record.
Yeah.
when I was 10 years old.
Oh.
And then you're back to. Okay.
Oh.
That would be my last question. you're planning to play as a DJ, or maybe to play live this album, or is it a collection of songs?
Right now I'm just DJing because I was on tour for a very long time, and if you go on tour, you have 6 people on stage, and you have a huge production, and you have buses and trucks and lorries, and the nice thing about DJing is you just show up with some records, and it's you have a lot more autonomy, and it's really fun and more civilized because you know when you DJ, you show up, you play records, and you go home, as opposed to touring where you live on a tour bus and you wake up in parking lots every day. So I've been enjoying DJing a lot.
Fed up being a rock star?
Yeah, I've never really been a rock star. You know, there's some people who are real rock stars. I'm a nerd from New York who makes electronic music in his bedroom. I've just had some records that have been successful, but I feel much more kinship and much more connection to other bald guys making electronic music in their bedroom than I do with Lenny Kravitz. I mean, I like Lenny's a nice guy, but that world of rock stardom, I don't understand. That's not me. You know, I read comic books and I make records in my bedroom. So,
thanks a lot.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. It's nice to see you again.